Welcome to Unadulterated Adultery Confessions channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. I remember the day Mandla brought Olivia home. Archie, our beautiful spirited stallion, was supposed to be the new addition to our peaceful life on the ranch. I was hesitant at first. I never imagined myself as a big horse person, but Mandla had always dreamed of owning one, so I went along with it, thinking what could go wrong. As days turned into weeks, something inside me began to change. First, it was just the little things, a quick visit to the stable to feed him, brushing his coat, or watching him trot around the field. It was peaceful, even therapeutic, as if he understood parts of me that no one else did. Felt innocent enough, but Manila started to notice. I spending more time with Archie. He teased me about it and laughed it off as some playful joke. "You love that big horse more than you love me, Nasa," he'd say, chuckling as he wrapped an arm around me. I'd laugh it off too, not wanting to admit that maybe he was right. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to it. It wasn't just about Archie, though. Mandla and I had been drifting apart for months, and he seemed more interested in his work than he did in me. We'd built our lives together, but somewhere along the way we lost each other. I tried to tell myself it was a phase, but deep down I felt like I was drowning in silence. One evening I stayed late in the stable, brushing Ella's coat and talking to him as if he could understand. I poured out my frustrations, my loneliness, and the longing for something I couldn't quite put into words. Archie just stood there, calm and quiet, his big, gentle eyes fixed on me as if he could read every thought running through my mind. "I wish Mandla could understand me like you do," I whispered. I don't know how long I stayed there, but by the time I walked back to the house, Manila was waiting for me by the door, his face unreadable, a mix of confusion and something else I couldn't quite pinpoint. "Late night in the stable again?" he asked, his voice carrying a strange edge. I nodded, feeling a rush of guilt that I couldn't explain. I tried to brush it off, laughing nervously, but Manila didn't laugh along with me. There was something in his eyes that night, a shadow of suspicion, maybe, or the beginning of doubt. "Don't you think you're spending a little too much time with him, Nasa?" he said, his voice low and weary. I rose, caught off guard by the seriousness in his tone. "Mandla, it's just a big horse," I said, forcing a smile. But even as the words left my mouth, I felt a strange ache in my C*******T, as if I was lying to both him and myself. In the days that followed, Mandla's words lingered in my mind. "Don't you think you're spending a little too much time with him?" Nama, it should have sounded ridiculous. It was just a big horse after all. But as I tried to go about my day, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that Manila was noticing things I hadn't admitted to myself. That Sunday morning I decided to take a break from the stable, thinking maybe some distance would clear my head. I busied myself with household chores, trying to ignore the nagging urge to check on Archie. But as the hours passed, the house felt emptier, quieter, like something was missing. Finally I gave in. I told myself I'd just check on him quickly, maybe refill his water and brush his coat a little. As I approached the stable, I could feel my heart beating a little faster, an excitement I couldn't explain. I slid the door open and there he was, Archie, standing tall and proud, his brown coat shining in the sunlight that peered through the stable windows. I reached out to stroke his nose, and as I did, a wave of calm washed over me. "You're my escape, Archie," I whispered. I knew it sounded foolish, but somehow in that quiet moment it felt like the only honest thing I'd said in a while. As I lost myself in thought, I didn't hear Mandla approaching. Suddenly his voice cut through the silence, startling me. "There you are, number, sir," he said, his tone strangely calm. I turned around, my heart pounding, to see him standing by the stable door. His gaze shifted from me to Archie, his expression unreadable. "I thought we agreed you'd cut back on spending so much time here," he said, crossing his arms. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice came out shaky. "Mundar, I just needed some air," I stammered, trying to sound nonchalant, but Manila didn't seem convinced. His eyes narrowed, and I could feel the tension between us thickening like an invisible wall that neither of us could break through. "NASA." He started, his voice softer, now almost pleading. "Is there something going on? I mean, between you?" And he trailed off, glancing at Archie as if he couldn't bring himself to say it out loud. I felt my cheeks flush, and for a second I thought about telling him everything, the loneliness, the way I felt like I was losing myself, the strange comfort I'd found in those quiet moments with Archie. But I stopped myself. The words caught in my throat. "Mandla, that's absurd," I said, forcing a laugh. "He's a big horse." Manila stared at me, his eyes searching mine, and for a moment I thought he would let it go. But then he stepped closer, his face tense with an emotion I couldn't quite place then. "Why does it feel like I'm losing you?" he whispered. I felt a pang of guilt deeper than anything I'd felt before. I wanted to reassure him, to tell him it was all in his head. But the truth was I didn't have the words. I felt torn, caught between the life wed, bowed together in a strange new world that only seemed to make sense. When I was in that stable, Mandla shook his head, looking away. "I don't understand numbers, sir," he said softly, his voice breaking. "But I feel like I'm watching you drift away, and I don't know how to stop it." I felt tears picking my eyes, but I held them back, unsure of what to say. I wanted to reach out to close the gap between us, but the silence hung heavy, filled with everything we weren't saying. Mandla didn't say anything more. That night, he left me standing in the stable, his footsteps fading as he walked back toward the house. I stayed with Ava while longer, my thoughts tangled and restless. It was as if all the little cracks in our marriage, the things we had both ignored for so long, had suddenly surfaced. The next day I tried to push it out of my mind. I went about my usual routine, busy myself with tasks around the house, hoping that the tension between Manila and me would settle on its own. But every time our paths crossed, I could feel at the distance the silent question hanging in the air. I knew something had to change. That evening, I decided to confront the truth, even if I didn't fully understand it myself. I waited until Mandla got home, and as he stepped into the kitchen I could see the guarded look in his eyes. "Mandla," I began, my voice wavering slightly. "We need to talk." He nodded, his expression serious, and gestured for me to sit down. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I know things have been strange between us," I said, choosing my words carefully. I felt disconnected, and maybe I let that draw me to Archie in ways I didn't expect. Mandla's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. I continued, my hands fidgeting as I searched for the right words. "I never meant to make you feel like I was drifting away," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "but I was lonely, Mundar. I felt like I'd lost a part of myself, and somehow being in the stable, spending time with Archie made me feel whole again." Manly took a deep breath, rubbing his hands over his face. "Nah, I never thought. I didn't think I'd be jealous of a big horse," he said with a sad smile. "But watching you, seeing you look at him like that, it felt like I was losing you to something I couldn't compete with." The honesty in his words caught me off guard. I hadn't realized just how deeply he'd been affected and how much he'd been holding back. It was as if the wall between us had cracked, revealing the pain we'd both been hiding. "Maybe we've both been lost," I said softly, reaching out to take his hand. "I let myself get too wrapped up in my own feelings, and I should have come to you first." I didn't know how." He squeezed my hand, his expression softening. "I guess we've both been running away in our own ways," he admitted. "But maybe it's time we start finding our way back." We sat there in silence, letting the weight of our unspoken words settle between us. In that moment I realized that the connection I had been searching for wasn't in the stable, but right here, sitting across from me. "Maybe it's time we find something we can both escape to together," Manila said, finally, a small smile tugging at his lips, and in that quiet kitchen with our hands clasped in the first honest conversation we'd had in a long time, I knew we had taken the first step back to each other. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories.